and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every week. We got Zach Thompson on from the Scatterjoy Project. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be on here with you and to talk with you. And the concept is just so cool, but I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I actually found you through Zach Jacobson, who did some of the branding stuff for you guys. I had him on the podcast, and then I found you guys, and I was like, I got to have this guy on. Like, this is such a cool idea.
Gotta have it. Zach's a beast. Not only does he have just a great name, but he's
true. Yeah,
he's amazing. He actually just did one more design that we released on a t-shirt. It pretty much sold out super fast. So grateful for Zach. He's incredible.
Yeah, I bet like even if the project didn't have a good message, which it does, the merchandise and stuff is just awesome. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Let's start out like talking a little bit about that since we already are. The Scatterjoy Project is a project that you run currently. And when did that start?
Yeah, we actually just launched it in January of this year. So January 2021, we launched it prematurely a little bit. So it's the Scatterjoy Project. It's a nonprofit that focuses on mental health, mental and emotional health, one and the same together. And our mission is to provide hope and help for people that are battling it. We think that people are fighting with something that a lot of people don't know anything about. You know, a lot of people have those emotions and those feelings trapped inside. And, you know, obviously there's a negative stigma that goes along with mental health. And September right now is actually Suicide Prevention Month. We just got through Suicide Prevention Week. And so there's heaviness around it, but also hope in it. We at the nonprofit, like the Scatterjoy Project, everything that we do goes towards like helping people have personal breakthrough, whether that's through events, workshops, retreats. We're going to host 3 retreats in 2022. Also, everything that we do goes towards fighting the stigma around it. And so we want to be a voice for people that need it. And so we're trying to be loud with it. Also, the massive goal that we have is we want to help people find help, find professional help if they need it and want it, and then also fund it. We want to be a kind of a solution in all of those issues. And so we're trying our best. Like I said, we kind of launched prematurely. We were just like, man, you know what? Screw it. Let's just start doing stuff. Like we're going to launch some apparel. Like we're going to host a couple of events and everything. And it kind of gained some momentum quicker than we thought it was going to, which was a massive blessing. But it also, I think, speaks to the need for it in our community, especially right now. I think the world needs a little more focus on healing right now instead of just coping with stuff. I think the pandemic, I mean, for me personally, the pandemic and the shutdown and everything that is going on, all the division in our world right now, it kind of bubbled up some things for me personally that I thought I've been past that. I worked through that trauma. I worked through that tough time and adversity in my life. But instead, I think I just swept it under the rug a little bit and ignored it. And I never really healed from it. I was just coping with it. And so our big thing is like, we want to really help people heal mentally and emotionally. So, yeah, man.
No, that's great. I mean, I think the pandemic for a lot of people, sort of like what you said, I mean, you could do other things to distract you. There are just less and less things, I feel like, when you're sitting at home and you're not able to do anything.
Yeah.
Distract your mind.
Yeah, we were just less busy, right? Like our world, I think especially in American culture, like we just stay busy and we think busy is production. We think like being busy and being productive are one and the same. And it's not. Like sometimes we're not the most productive we can be. And when I say productive, I don't, and again, American culture, when I say productive, I think my mind and some other people's minds go to like professionalism and working and bank account and all that stuff. Well, I can be productive with my mental and emotional health if I choose to be, but instead, like we tend to just be busy. And so I think that's a really good point. Like we just got forced to slow down and we got forced to be less busy. And then all of our coping mechanisms and patterns and different things like that kind of got shaken up. And we're like, dang, what? Like, I don't feel healthy. And so we're trying our best to be a light, man. And I think conversations like this go further than we think they do. I think when people hear us talking about mental health and us talking about the things that we struggle with and being vulnerable and being fully transparent and all of those things, I think it gives people hope. It gives people permission to like say, Oh yeah, me too. Like I deal with that. Like let's talk
Yeah.
about it. Let's figure it out. And so yeah, man, it's a good point by you.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I told you a little bit about my own story, but I was very much in the camp of like I didn't talk about it at all because when I was a kid, I was diagnosed with OCD and anxiety disorder that I still like deal with now, but
Yeah.
my parents told me like not to tell anyone about it. So I just was stuck in this like weird place where I felt like I was the only one dealing with any of this stuff and like I was
Mm.
just this like weird kid that couldn't control his mind and his thoughts and stuff like that. And it wasn't until college that I actually like opened up to people like my friends and like talked about it for the first time. And to your point, like that has been one of the biggest things for me is like reading, and it sounds so rudimentary, but like reading about how other people are dealing with this and just the fact that they have it. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my
man.
gosh, like it is like such a liberating feeling. It was at least for me.
Yeah, what a freeing moment that is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like when you come out and like speak about what you struggle with for the very first time and then it's accepted on the other end. Because I
Mhm.
think like what keeps us in shackles a lot with our own like emotions and baggage and stuff is like, well, I'm either going to be judged for it or like not accepted with it.
Mm. Yeah.
And like what an amazing freeing moment to be like accepted with that, like by your
Mhm.
friends and by the people that you were talking to. It's probably a mixed bag. Like some people might be shocked by the news, but mostly supportive, I think. And I think like that's one of the things that is really crucial to like living a fulfilling life is like
Mhm.
being surrounded by people that actually like love you and want you to be who you were created to be. That's like the dark and the light. Like it's like the good and the bad. They accept it fully, but they continually want you to be better.
Mhm.
And so like, gosh, what an amazing, like freeing moment that is when people can come out and say like, man, I struggle with this. And
Mhm.
then people like start rallying around you and wrapping arms around you.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to see like humanity at its best. I think that's when it's at its best.
Yeah. Did you have a, because I know you had some, or you still do deal with health problems with a heart problem that literally could kill you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's a huge thing. So was that really taxing on your own mental health when that sort of started
Man,
coming up?
like that's such a big piece to my mental health journey. I love that you kind of know that about me coming in,
Yeah.
so don't have to explain the whole thing. But for anyone that's tuning in, like I will, but that's just like such a small piece to my mental health journey. It's crazy how like everything is so connected in my life
Hmm.
and like the stories that kind of unravel as we get older and everything. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder when I was in seventh grade. My uncle, who was like a father figure to me, he suddenly passed away. He was playing tennis, collapsed, and they couldn't get him to the hospital in time. I think he died on the way there. And he was like a father figure to me. He was like a giant of a man in my life and just always looked up to him. And here I am as a seventh grade kid having like this traumatic moment and I don't really know how to fully grasp it and deal with it. And I don't think a lot of people do. Like I think like you're not supposed to know how to fully understand and deal with that, but at the same time, you need that healthy community around you to say like, hey, let's get through this together. And we did a little bit, but again, I'm so young. And so my mom was kind of like, didn't, I don't think she really knew what to do. Like I was always a pretty sensitive kid
Hmm.
and really emotional. And when that happened, it kind of like sent me to a dark place. And so, man, I quit. Like I was an athletic kid. I quit football that year. Like I didn't want to play any sports. I didn't want to be really around anyone. And I started going to a therapist and he was like teach me breathing techniques
Hmm.
and again, I'm mature enough to know the cultural norm of like, man, I don't need help. Like,
Hmm.
what the heck is this therapy thing? Like, I don't need this. And what a mistake that was for me to like convince my mom to stop taking me. And so I battled anxiety and depression really since then my entire life. And so high school, college happens. I played baseball in college. And when I was going into my senior year, my mom started having some complications with her heart. And my dad found her on the dining room floor, passed out without a pulse. And she came back to, like, what a blessing that is. And paramedics came and she went through like a year of testing to figure out what was going on. Well, they put everything together and they figured out that it was like a hereditary thing. Like it was a
Hmm.
family thing. Like it's been passed down from generation to generation. My uncle who passed away, that kind of like started my whole mental health journey, died of the same heart condition that my mom was struggling with, called ARVC. Everyone in our family needed to get tested because we were like, man, like who else has this? Like we now know that it exists, so we want to be preventative. And everyone got tested, and I tell people that I was the lucky or unlucky winner, however you want to chalk it up. I was the only one in our extended family that carried the gene for the condition, and I went through about a month's worth of testing through the Cleveland Clinic up here in Ohio, and I found out that it had progressed quite a bit just with like my athletic background and everything and things that I was doing. And so I needed a defibrillator implanted right away in my chest, which is like another traumatic moment. Like we have these moments, memories and traumas in our lives that happen. And I think at this point, like I was mature enough to know that I needed to sit with it a little bit. Doesn't mean that I like took it the right way. I didn't really bounce back to adversity like really quickly, I don't think, but at least I was mature enough to understand that I needed to really feel what I was feeling first. And so I had that surgery for the defibrillator in my chest, and it sits like right under the skin right here on the left side of my chest. And the first 3 months it went off 3 times and saved my life.
Wow.
And yeah, so I just kind of look at that and I'm like, man, the timing of that can't be a coincidence. Like I got to be here for a bigger reason. And so I was coaching at the time. I always knew that I wanted to help people. And I kind of went on this path of like really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and stuff. And fast forward, I think like 8 years later now, 9 years later, it's gone off 2 more times within the last 2 years. This past year, I spent 4 days in the Cleveland Clinic for some testing and some different things. And we're here with the Scattered Joy Project. And so those moments, like those are kind of like these calibrating moments of, you know, while you're here, make it worth it. And I use that term purpose, like, you know, you got to be purposeful in life, and everyone's trying to find their purpose and do something meaningful and all these things. And I think like it's one of the most like Googled things in the world, like how to find your purpose.
Sure.
I think again, in Americanized culture, we think our purpose needs to be our profession. I think like you can do anything within purpose if you decide to do everything that you do filled with kindness and compassion and empathy and love, and then you're walking in purpose. So it doesn't really matter what you do. It's just like you make that decision in your life. And again, like that moment for me, it's just like a calibrating moment to say like, hey, this is how I want to live the rest of my life. This is what I want to do. And what avenues can we explore to be able to do that in? And the Scattered Joy Project, that's it. Like I want to help people that are walking down a similar journey to me.
That's so incredible. I mean, you shocked me, I think. So I have an anxiety disorder too. I've gone to the hospital for panic attacks because of my fear of dying. I don't know specifically what your anxiety is about, but having a heart condition that can kill you or has tried to kill you, it seems like that's just crazy. So what happens when it goes off? Like, do you pass out or like, and then come back to, or what? How does it work?
Yeah. So they told me, like when I first had the surgery, they told me that, you know, I'd probably most likely never feel it. Like I would probably get to a point where like I was unconscious or passed out before it went off. Well, all 5 times that it's gone off, like I've been like fully conscious. It honestly feels like you get struck by lightning. You know, it's like, it's the same thing as the pads and they say clear and blow you up. It's the same exact thing. It's just within my chest. And so, yeah, it doesn't feel good, and it wipes you out for a couple of days to a week physically and emotionally. There's been a couple of times where I've like caught myself on my knees, and there's been some times where like I've kind of collapsed to the ground. But I tell people too, it's like when it goes off, like you have that moment, I almost feel like I'm walking around like a ghost for a couple of weeks. This last time that it happened, it really rocked me emotionally. I feel like more than before, because now my wife and I, we have a daughter. And so, you know, like you have this feeling of like, man, like I'm grateful that I'm still here. I'm grateful that I get to live a life. I'm grateful that I get to be a dad to my daughter and a husband to my wife and all these things. But then you also have like a lot of grief wrapped into it as well, of like, but like I'm not fully the person that I thought I was going to be, or I can't do the things that I fully want to do. I think sometimes we feel like we can only feel one emotion at a time. And that's false. Like you're always kind of this mixed bag of emotions. And so every time it goes off, I'm like really, really trying to wrestle with those feelings. And I think the one thing that kind of gets me out of it is healthy community, people that pour into me and love me and support me, but then also to just trying to come back to perspective on life. Because I was like you, Sam, like my anxiety started because I was fearful of death and like what happened after I died and different things like that, because my uncle had just passed away. And so like I still have anxiety wrapped around that a little bit, but I think like that perspective, trying to get back to a perspective of what can I do while I'm here and how can I be fully like wrapped into the moment? Because like there's been a lot of people that have said like depression is kind of like shame or guilt wrapped with things that have happened in your past. Anxiety is like this nervousness about what might happen in the future. And having that like great perspective of like, man, what can I do now? How can I do the best that I can be with what I have, with where I am right now? And that's going to keep me grounded in the moment. And so you're never perfectly in the present. You're always like kind of dancing in between everything. But I think that's what helps me get back from that ghost like feeling after it happens.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that's one of the things I also work on a lot in therapy is like, yeah, just trying to be more present and sort of I feel like we're very similar people, like accepting my emotions. Cause I had a lot of trouble growing up, like even identifying what my emotions were, like what emotions were happening. Like I think I labeled a lot of the emotions as the same. And so I was very confused growing up. But yeah, I think that's the problem with me too. I often look back on my life, like when I was growing up, when my OCD was like super, super bad. And I get like really sad because I was like, I wasn't there mentally for like any of the experiences that we had. Like if I went on vacation, I might as well not have been there, because I wasn't thinking about anything that was happening on that vacation. Like I was so wrapped up in my own obsessive thought patterns and stuff like that. I'm really working on trying to not do that anymore. So,
well, again, even in that story, dude, like it's like there's this beautiful combination between light and dark in our lives. Like our lives, I don't think were ever created to just be like fully good or fully bad. Like there's like this yin and yang to it and everything. And that's really true. Like we posted something on our Instagram account like this week or last week, and we were talking about like the reasons and the beauty of like shadows and light. Like for shadows in our lives, like shadows have beauty to them because they're casted by light. Like it comes from a light source. And so like there's this brilliant relationship between like the dark and the light in our lives. And if we can find the relationship, like Sam, it's like you coming to the realization to say like, man, I wasn't fully present because of my condition and I couldn't really help it back then, but I'm trying to get better at it now. And like, what an amazing perspective and mindset to carry into all of these future experiences that you're going to have that are going to make you even more grateful and even more present and all those things. And so like, I don't know if you ever would have had that without the other. And not to say like bad things happen for a reason. Sometimes they don't. Like sometimes like bad things just happen. But if we can really think about them intentionally, we can create a purpose because of it. You know what I'm saying? Like we can really like shift our futures to be better off from like looking and observing the past or the shadow that we just like experienced or walked through. And so I think that's a huge thing that I hope people can take from this conversation and also take and apply to their lives as well.
Yeah, I definitely would not be in the place I'm in now currently and be as thoughtful as I am if I didn't think the way I did back then, But yeah, I think it really does help. Therapy was like a huge part of it. And that's why I'm so talking about therapy. And I don't know how you sort of touched on it a little bit when you first started going, because when I started going as well, it was like all breathing techniques. Like I wasn't actually, that's all they taught me is like how to basically try to breathe my panic attacks away, which they're helpful in their own way, but not the root of the problem by any means. But yeah, I think there's such a barrier for people that to even like go, because it's not even just like this. Oh, I guess it is part of the stigma too, but it's just like this scary thing of like not knowing what to expect or how it's going to go, or are they what am I going to say? Like, what am I going to talk about for an hour? You know, like I hear that a lot too. So I'm glad you guys are focusing on that as well, because I think it's just tough, I think, for people initially to just get in there and see that it's like helpful and not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's like there's some definite fear and anxiety in going to talk to someone brand new that you've really never met, that is an expert and went to school in it, that is going to be like reading all your mail and like getting down to the bottom of like why you feel the way you feel and hopefully teach you some things along the way. I come from an athletic background too. And so to say like, and it's kind of the same thing as a coach. Like I didn't know my head coaches before I got to college, but I trusted their expertise and I trusted that they were going to make me a better baseball player. And it's really the same thing with a therapist or a mental health professional. It's like, man, I fully have to like let go and trust, because if I don't, then I'm not doing myself any good. And it might take some time too, obviously, but I think there's like power in trying to shift the mindset to say like, man, they're really like my mental health coach instead of like a therapist. I think therapist kind of has a negative connotation to it now, after like our culture is kind of almost like demonized therapy or like made it feel like it's just for the weak. It's like, man, anything in my life that I want to get better at, I need a mentor or a friend or a coach that's going to help me. And if there's anything in your life that we should want to get better at, it should be our mental and emotional health, because they drive everything else that we do and all the relationships that we have. And so what we're trying to do is like really, really push like, hey, give it a shot. It's worth a shot. Like, I think everyone has something that they might need to like work through and talk through and different things like that. And so we're really trying to partner with organizations and create tools to help it be easier. I think one of the other things too that Sam, you might have touched on is that's really overwhelming is like searching for the right therapist.
Yeah.
There's so many different people out there, and just like not every person's for you. Like if that was the case, we'd be like really besties with like everyone in the world, and we're not. Like, I mean, it's cool, but like not every therapist is for you. Some have different expertise, and so that search can be overwhelming. And so we're trying really hard to help people match with the right therapist, so people could like get on our website and just make it easy. They'd either find resources or match with the right therapist. And then it's just like getting in the door or getting on a Zoom call or something like that. And then overcoming the hurdle of opening up and trusting, like we talked about too. But yeah, it takes a lot.
Yeah. I think, I mean, even in my experience, like I've gone to a lot of therapists, and I think there's been two that I've liked over the past, like maybe probably like 20 years. But yeah, it is that thing of like, I think for me personally, it's like when you go to therapy and you start talking, I think even for me, someone who has gone to therapy, like for most of their life, like most of my life, I have gone to therapy. I think I had this like sort of this ego about myself of like, I know myself. Like I know what you're trying to get at here. You know, like I know before you know. I think recently what I found out like this past like year or so is like, I do a lot of stuff that I didn't realize that I did, and for reasons that I didn't know either. So I think even for the people out there who are like, you know what, I know everything about myself, I know what they're going to say. It's like, well, you don't know everything about yourself. And I don't think anyone ever can know everything. Yeah. So you might as well go give it a shot and see what you can learn.
Yeah. And then even if you do, like, even if you think you know what they're going to say, there might be some like helpful things that they teach you. You know, it kind of goes back to the coaching thing. It's like, I thought I was doing everything perfect athletically until I got a really good coach and he wanted me to become better. And then he started teaching me new things to do to become better. And so it was like, and then even like watching video film and like all these things, it's like the same thing of like diagnosing and like getting us talking about the emotions. That's almost like studying tape in athletics. It's like, all right, we're going to like dig into this. Like, what have you been thinking about? Like, why do you feel that way? Why do you think that happened? Like digging to the root of it, like you were kind of mentioning before when we got started, to really start to heal. But yeah, I think like that coaching mindset just helps so much. At least for me, when I started going back, I was like, man, this person just wants to make me better. And so I'm going to give it all I can with the conversation.
Yeah. And sometimes they don't know how to make you better, but that's why there's a lot of them and you can go to someone else. But,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just like dating.
Yeah, it is very much like that. It is very much like that. But I sort of like on the athletic analogy, it's sort of like if you believe that you are already in a good place, that's great. That's so good. But if you already think you're a good athlete and you didn't even know that moving your arm like this much could make you a great pitcher or something, or like change the speed of your ball or something, if you don't even know that, like you're never going to get to that point. So like you need someone who has that expertise that can give you that guidance.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I love that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, so if you don't mind talking about it, just because we are on this sort of topic and I am interested, like you talked about it when you were very young, but as you were an adult and started going to therapy or continue going to therapy, like what was your experience like finding a therapist and like going to therapy for the first time as like an adult? I had a very different experience too as an adult compared to a kid.
I think you definitely, for me, I had my guard up still. And, you know, like for me, I was like, even when I go, like, it's kind of the same analogy of like everyone kind of needs a coach. So like even therapists have therapists, like they have things that they need to talk
or they
through
should.
with people. Or they should. Yeah. So like for me, I was like, I worked at a church before. I used to travel and speak and talk about social emotional learning, still do. I used to help people as a life coach and all these things. And that kind of like got us to like creating this nonprofit. But even then I kind of had this self-righteous like ego of like, I kind of know, like I kind of know what they're going to say, like you were just talking about. And so I had my guard up too, but just like I said, like you get to the right fit and you start building trust, and then it becomes this really freeing moment to have another person to rely on and have another person to bear the weight. Because I think for me, one of the things that I always have struggled with is I just try to carry everything for everyone emotionally. A lot of people with like the line of work that I'm in and everything, like a lot of people will confide in me, like some things that they're going through and want to talk through it and all these things. And it's hard for me to like set that down. A huge thing that I learned was there's a difference between shouldering and supporting. And I would have never learned that if it wasn't for like a relationship with pastor, therapists, like people like that in my life. They're always giving me new tools to kind of chew on and digest and see if they're for me or not. And so I think that's just like, I fully believe in it, man. Like I fully believe in having someone there that's non-biased, that like can help you shoulder the weight or support you while you're supporting other people. And so, yeah, I kind of went through that same thing of like, man, my guard's up a little bit, but got to learn to trust them as a coach and shop around and find the right fit.
Yeah, because I think that's we're talking about it a lot, but I think that's such a huge barrier for people, at least that I've talked to too, is that they go to like one therapist and they don't like the therapist, and then they're like, "Well, this is just not for me." And I'm like, "Well, no, it's not, you like." It is for you. It's just they're not for you. So
what I tell people all the time is like, you know, if you went to a gym or if you went to a Target and the cashier was like rude to you, or like you didn't find what you were looking for at that Target, doesn't mean you're never going to shop at Target again. Or like if you go to a gym and you have a bad experience at a gym, doesn't mean you're not going to like work out ever again or like go to another gym or different things like that. You're just not going to go to that gym. And so like it's the same thing with therapy. It's like, no, it works. The process works. Like you just got to find the right fit. I'm really glad that you said that.
Yeah, because it's just like I had, and I'm sure you've had experiences where like when I was initially looking for therapists as an adult, I sometimes fell into this experience of like, I'm going to you for therapy. You only seem to know one thing, but that's not going to help me. You know what I mean? Like, so like for what I was going for, what I was looking for, and they're like, we should try this. And I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Like, that's not going to do anything. But it's like all they knew to do. So it's like, you are probably going to help someone else out, but not me. So I need to go find someone else. It was sort of like, yeah, eventually I just found the style of person that I like. Like I really enjoy not only learning about myself in therapy, but like learning just generally. So like if I find like a therapist or, a psychiatrist or something that like knows a ton about like mental health in general and like knows all these different like theories and how they work together, like even if it has nothing to do with me, I'm like fascinated. And
Yeah.
I like really want to come back and like every week talk about stuff. So it's just finding the person that's right for you. And there's literally thousands of therapists. So there's definitely a fit for sure for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a fit. And even that in itself is kind of overwhelming to be like, all right,
Yeah.
well, what if I don't find the right one? Well, there's resources out there. And that's why we kind of
Yeah.
created this find help tool to be able to match you with the right one. We partner with an organization called Sundermind right now, and they'll match you with 2 therapists based on your profile, based on what you struggle with, based on your demographics and everything and what you need. Then they'll email them to you. You say, yeah, I want this one. I'll give it a shot. And then if you
Yeah.
don't find the right fit, then you just do it again.
Yeah.
And it takes the search out of it. But then also too, there's some people that I feel like want to feel like really empowered in their search because it's their emotions and their lives. And so
Sure.
that's really great too. There's not a bad route that you can take if it fits you and your personality. And so like for you, Sam, like you're just naturally curious. And so to find that fit of a therapist that is going to kind of unload these theories and this knowledge and everything, like it probably just feels really good. It feels like it's a friend that you guys are just talking about things that may or may not like fully apply to you. But I think at the end of the day, like that is healing in itself. It's like having someone to talk to and be curious with and get down to the root of things that are going on. And then also just have a relationship with.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it really goes back to too, like not having anyone to talk to about any of this growing up. And then
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too. I just really like to learn about things now because I was just not allowed to when I was a kid, basically. So when I was looking you up and like sort of researching you, were you going to play like professional sports or were you playing professional sports? Because when I looked you up, I was like, you seem like a very, very good athlete. Like I feel like you were on the verge of playing or already playing professional sport.
I hung them up after my college career. I was dealing with, I might have been able to play Frontier League, so like semi-professional baseball. I thought my route was going to be a baseball coach. I thought I was going to be a baseball coach the rest of my life just because I loved the game and I love the game within the game with like strategies and different things that were going on and stuff. So when I finished my senior year and I drove home and I was going to go back to the university that I was at and be a graduate assistant, get my master's. And that's when my mom told me that I needed to get tested. And that's when all that testing was going on and stuff. So even if I wanted to pursue that at all, which I wasn't going to, and I probably wasn't, I was okay, but I wasn't elite, I don't think. And so I thought coaching was just going to be my route. So I went back to school, got my master's, graduate assistant baseball coach, and then started doing a bunch of other things that I still tell people I'm a coach in a way, just coaching people in different capacities. And so, but yeah, athletics is a huge part of my life, and I think taught me a lot of really good things. I think one thing that I had to overcome was like an unhealthy competitive attitude for when I was growing up. And so like unhealthy in a way that I was tying a lot of my worth into who I was as a person. And I owe a lot of that, like unraveling that sort of identity to what happened to me with my heart condition. And so like I was no longer able to do the things athletically that I really wanted to do. And things are kind of dwindling away of what I could do, like it's just, I can do less and less as I go, I think, to just be safer for me. And so like, that was a huge thing for me. It was like the world flipped upside down to say like, man, like everything that I thought I was, like, I thought I was an athlete. What was like, I was just playing sports. Like that was just something that I did. I was a lot more than that.
Right.
And so it was like everything that I thought I was when I found out about my heart condition flipped upside down, and I didn't know who I was anymore. And I had to like really go on this self-discovery journey of like, man, who is Zach? Like what do I enjoy? What brings me joy? Like what actually brings me joy? What were the things that I was doing that were really like quick and fleeting. Like the things that I was chasing that were just going to make me happy for a short moment. What were those decisions? What gives me lasting joy? What gives me lasting meaning in my life? And how do I want to spend the rest of my life? And so like, I think like those and that adversity again, like the darkness in our lives, like if we get to a place eventually, took me a couple years to even get to that place. Sure. And I still wrestle with it sometimes, but get to a place where we can look at it from a different perspective, re-examine it, learn from it, and then shift behaviors because of it. I think it's super pivotal. And so I owe a lot to being diagnosed. I owe a lot to being in the hospital. I owe a lot to facing that adversity. I wouldn't wish it on myself ever again. I wouldn't do it ever again. I have to deal with it because I have it, but like the emotional trauma that I faced really created who I am now. And so grateful for that.
I'm curious myself, like when that did flip on its head and you sort of were like trying to figure out like who you were or what you wanted to do or whatever, what was that period of time like for you? I mean, you talked about still sort of having to deal with that. I mean, I think for everyone, it's like an ongoing fluid process, but that had to be like a really hard time.
Yeah, it was the hardest time of my life, I think. At the same time, there was other things in my life going on. Like my parents were going through beginning the process of deciding to get a divorce, and I'm starting to date my now wife. And so there's like all that wrapped into it where it was like, man, what is marriage? Like, what are relationships? How do I do this the right way? And everything there. And then also too, just like the trauma of, and the hard time of being diagnosed with something and having your life changed. It was brutal, dude. Like I said, I don't think I dealt with it the right way. I started coping with it in numerous ways, making bad decisions, just getting into some drinking too much and just doing some things that, again, would make me numb the pain for a second, but not do anything for me long term. And honestly, like an unhealthy combination of like feeling sorry for myself. And I think I got to a place where finally, like, I was like, I can feel sorry for myself, but still like live my life. And I think one thing that really helped me was like I was still doing something purposeful. Like I was coaching, I was around the game of baseball still, and I was mentoring like these young students that were in college and everything still. And you know, it's fun. Like a couple weekends ago, I officiated a wedding for a former player of mine at the college level, and just to have that relationship in my life means the world. And I owe those opportunities to like how I started to like realize that I needed to shift some things and deal with it in a better way. And so I think anytime you're going through a tough time, you have to find something else that's going to keep giving you hope. And for me, the hope was in other people's lives, and it always has been for me. And so I didn't have a ton of hope in my life at that point. I dealt with some suicidal ideation at that time too. I had hope in other people. I had hope that I could help other people. And I think because of that, it helped myself. And I finally kind of got out of that ditch a little bit. And so I think that we just did a campaign, and one of our sayings for the Scatter Joy Project is hold on to hope. And I think one thing that we want to really try and communicate with what we do is that people can provide hope to other people. Like people reaching out to me, they might not have known what they did for me in that moment by smiling or asking how I was doing or asking if I wanted to go grab lunch or just checking in on me, phone call, text message. I don't think they need to, or maybe not fully realize what they did for me in those moments, but it was massive. And it was the smallest gesture, right? Like it was the smallest thing, but that enabled me to hold on to hope. And I think that transferred into me taking on that belief and trying to do that for other people. Yeah. And like I said before, like there's things that we never realize that people are dealing with on the inside. Everyone, I think Robin Williams has a quote that talks about that a little bit. It's like everyone has a battle that they're fighting that we know nothing about. Be kind always. And I think like that was a massive lesson for me in that moment to say like, these people know physically what I'm going through, but maybe not mentally and emotionally, but they're still here. They're showing up for me. They're doing little gestures that like show me they still care. And there's too much at stake. Like I want to do the same for other people. I still have like tough times. Like I said, like I feel like I'm kind of like walking around like a ghost sometimes. I feel like I just actually had a device check and some of the numbers weren't the best. Some things are progressing a little bit, but those moments, like I said, you kind of like, you want to live in a way that provides other people with hope. And there's a lot of people that are going through tougher things than me. That kind of a belief doesn't make everything go away. But if you realize that there's a lot of people going through tougher things than you and you want to be part of their solution, then that makes things feel better. And so if you can take on that purposeful mindset and feeling and turn that into action, then I promise you, hope is going to be the most powerful thing that you could ever feel and have within the sails of your life. And so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly powerful though. I mean, there's so much that every person goes through, especially when you talk about mental health. I mean, talking about, there's so many things I want to touch on that you just said, but like not knowing what someone is going through, the interesting part about, I think personally experiencing mental illness and at a very young age is that not only me, but I've seen other people are very good at hiding it. Like if I was going to, and I've heard this so many times in my life, I would tell someone, I'm like, yeah, I have a really severe OCD and an anxiety disorder. And they'll be like, really? I never would have known. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's because I spent 20 years trying to hide it,
Yeah. And I'm exhausted.
Yeah. And it's fucking tiring. So I don't want to do it anymore. But yeah, so you just never know. You truly don't ever know. I think I had a similar problem to you where I'm not a very religious person. I know you mentioned a pastor, but when I was growing up, I used to write my own wills, like as a kid, because I was so sure that I was going to die or I was going to do it myself, because of what I was going through. And I remember there's like a specific frame in my mind that I still remember. There's like a bike path by my parents' house. And I just was in the middle of like a run or something. And I just stopped and like fell to my knees and was like, why are you doing this to me? Like screaming to nothing, basically. And sort of what you talked about is like, I was very much like, I felt sorry for myself a lot growing up and what I had to go through and stuff. And once again, there is a place for that. As you said, like you can feel sad about the things you went through or, because everything's not awesome all the time, but it's the progress, it's the stopping you from progress. That's the problem. It's the getting stuck in the feeling sorry and not like trying to change anything or work towards anything and just being in that space forever. And I felt like I was in a space like that for a long time where I was just like, this stuff is just happening to me and it sucks. And I'm like not doing anything about it, not like trying to make my life any better, but just like allowing myself to sit in that area because it's really easy to do. It's like really easy to sit in that. Oh yeah, everything sucks because I don't know. So I very much relate to that too. And
when you're in those moments, I don't know if I'm really going out on a limb and saying like everyone's been in a similar emotionally charged place. Like maybe not to the point of like ideation and maybe not to the point of like creating their own wills or different things like that, which is like a powerful, powerful story and moment. But like, I think everyone's been to a place where they've felt like, man, this is too much. I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. And when you get to that place, and like you said, you're stuck in that place or you feel stuck in that place, it's really easy to give up looking for glimmers of light. Like it's really easy to stop looking for hope. But what I've found is my hope that has kept me going, it's not this like big, it's never, ever, ever been this like big, grandiose thing that's happened in my life or this huge gesture from someone. It's always been the smallest thing that I'm like, holy cow, like this is worth it. Man, like they love me, or like, man, I feel accepted, or man, like I can get through this. It's never been a huge thing. It's always been the smallest thing. And I think like my hope for people that are in that place right now that feel overwhelmed, they feel burn out. They feel like they can't do it. Maybe they feel like this is it, that they don't give up looking, that they don't give up like looking for the small gestures, that they don't give up looking for the small moments, that they don't give up looking for like the tiniest piece of their narrative and their story that has like the ability to launch them into a new place. I think like our tagline is there's strength in your story. With the Scattered Joy Project, we fully believe that like every single person's story has strength woven into it at some point. And we think that your scars are the things that give you strength. Like your scars aren't like when you're hurt, you have like a physical wound. There's a scar that forms and it's there. It's always there. And we don't look at our scars and we don't feel like ashamed of our scars. We say chicks dig scars. Like that's what we say. Yeah. But from an emotional standpoint, we have a trauma, we have a wound. It feels like it healed, but we still see the scar or we still feel it in some way. And then we have shame in it or we have guilt in it. Instead of really looking at it and saying like, no, that scar is actually a symbol of my resilience. Like that scar is actually a symbol of my strength. And switching that narrative and saying like, you know what? No, there's strength in my story. Like there's so much hope. Like there's so many things that I've gone through. There's so many people that will support me. There's so many things that are happening in my life that could be for good or that will be for good. And then we just got to do our best to hold on to it. And I would rather be exhausted from looking for hope and trying to find hope than be exhausted trying to hide everything. You know, like I would rather be tired trying to find hope than rather be tired trying to hide it and trying to hide my struggle. And so I think like even you sharing that, even us having this conversation, hopefully inspires more people to open up and have these conversations about the things that they've gone through in their lives. And hopefully people don't like that's the biggest thing with this is like that people can continue to look for the glimmer of light, like the hope, and to realize that there's strength in their story, man.
I mean, even with the cut analogy, it's like if you get a cut or like an open wound on like your arm or something and you don't care for it, it like gets infected and then like it becomes so much worse. So like even in a mental or emotional standpoint, it's weird that we don't look at it the same way. Where it's like if you do have a trauma and just leave it unattended, it's not gonna become better. It's not gonna heal itself. It's not gonna just be this. You know, it's going to get worse. It's going to get infected. Things are going to get worse.
Right.
You know, so
until you actually like focus on it. And what we talked about too at the beginning of this, like when we were talking about the pandemic, is like sometimes we feel like we don't have time to focus on it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're just too busy. Sometimes we got to get the kids ready for school and we got to drop them off and then we got to get to our office and we got to get to work. And then we have all these things that are piling up. I got to get the dinner ready. Like, oh, I got to make sure like my 401k is in shape, or like I got to make sure all these things are in order, but all those things mean nothing if you're not in order. It's the whole like put your oxygen mask on before you help anyone with theirs, like in a plane. It's the same thing with mental and emotional health. It's like, and I really have to like at least take one step to do it and make sure that I'm, maybe you never ever feel like you're in a good place, but at least you feel like you're getting to a better place, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is so important. Like I was running the other day and there was a guy that I had to call 911 on because he was like on a bridge, like sitting on a bridge, like over a highway. I had never seen someone that was like either thinking about like jumping into a highway or something, or even just like, like planning on doing it or something. And that like really shook me. And I was like, once again, what you said, like all that stuff is irrelevant if you're not even here. If you're not even here to like your 401ks, your job or whatever, if like, it's just such an important part and such an overlooked part. And I would argue probably the most important part of anyone's life is their mental and emotional health, because everything else runs off that.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know what? Like, I hope that guy thinks about the person that called. I hope he thinks about you. Like, I hope he thinks about like, man, someone noticed me. Someone actually saw me. Someone saw me in my lowest of lows and wanted me here. And they don't even know me, but they wanted me here. And so like, those are the moments like that I was talking about, is like, what little spark of hope can you like find? What piece of narrative in your story can you hold on to and say like, no, like that person, I don't even know who called. I don't know why they called, but they wanted me here. They wanted me to live. They wanted me to be around. They wanted me to live my life and take the next step while living. That can be powerful, dude. That's so powerful. And so like, I just want that for so many people.
Yeah. And the thing I want to emphasize too is like, we are not unique in that situation. Like there are so many people out there that want you to live your life and be happy, and like people that don't even know you. Like I literally, I want people to succeed and flourish and be happy. Like it's not a unique situation. Like if I saw anyone in that situation, I would want them to live and like not and get help that they need and be on a better path. But yeah, it's not a unique situation for sure. I think we get into a very lonely existence sometimes, especially with the pandemic, where you feel like nobody really cares. Nobody cares what I'm doing. Nobody cares. But like I care. And I think a lot of people do. So I'm really grateful for projects like yours and hearing your story. And I think similar to you, I started this project because I believe that like everyone is interesting and everyone has a story to tell. And I don't have to know you to find that you're interesting. And I've contacted people and about doing this podcast or whatever. And sometimes they're like, you know what, I'm not that interesting. And I'm like, yeah, you are though. I definitely think you are. So yeah, I think I'm really grateful for people like you and grateful for your mission and what you're doing to inspire people and your work. So thank you so much for coming on.
Man, thank you for having me. Powerful conversation. I will never forget, for sure.
Thank you so much.